I'm going to show you how to model a shield with realistic texturing, with surface imperfections, and even some blood and guts splattered on the surface. So start by deleting the default cube. I'm going to maximize my viewing window. Now turn screencasting keys on so you can see what keys I'm pushing. So have a look down on the bottom left. Whenever I push keys, for example 5 on the number pad and 3, it's going to change me to right orthographic view. If you don't have a number pad, then you need to turn that on. So user preferences, input, and change this tick box to emulate numpad if you need it. Also, while you're here, going to turn on an add-on Node Wrangler, N-O-D-E. Tick this box and save user settings. When you're done, you can X out of that. Start by inserting a mesh, this plane. It's sitting flat at the moment. Easiest way to rotate that is to tick Align to View and it will rotate around. The other way is R for rotate, Y for the Y-axis, type 9, 0 and push enter. Obviously I don't want to do that, so I'm going to go Control Z to undo. I'm going to push Tab, that's going to change to edit mode. Alternatively, you can click the bottom down here and change edit and object mode. I'm going to highlight that vertice on the top corner there, and I'm going to hit the space bar to bring up search. And I'm going to type cursor, C-U-R-S-O-R, and I'm going to put snap cursor to active. So the 3D cursor is now on that point. That's the red and white dotted circle. Now back to object mode, space bar. Now I'm going to move the origin, O-R-I-G-I-N. The origin is this orangey yellow dot, and if I'm going to set the origin and origin to 3D cursor, so that origin's now up here. So push the letter N, get rid of that menu, don't need it. I'm going to put a modifier on. The modifier button looks like the spanner, and there's a button add modifier. So I'm going to put a mirror on. So that's reflecting on that point. Tick clipping. Push tab to go to edit mode, A to select all, W and choose subdivide. That's now divided vertically and horizontally. I'm going to now deselect all by pushing A, highlight the bottom row, and with clipping on, I can pull down, but I can't pull it apart. But I'm going to push the letter Z, so it's going to pull only in that blue axis, once, EZ twice. Next thing I'm going to do is start shaping this so it's like a shield. I'm going to highlight the bottom part and I'm going to turn on proportional editing. Push O to turn that on, and then as I rotate, there's a circle here and it will adjust anything within that circle. So if I scroll on the mouse wheel, it makes it bigger or smaller. And I'm going to hit G to grab, R to rotate, G to grab, and I'm just making constant adjustments until I'm happy with the shape of my shield. So once I'm happy with that, I'm going to put on another modifier, and that's going to be a subdivision surface. And you'll notice that it rounds too much. So next thing I'm going to do is loop cuts. Control R. When I hover over different places, it's going to ask. So the pink line, I'm going to click and then pull up. Don't need it too close. R and across over here and make that about square, and again down the bottom. Now as I do this one, if I push the letter E and then F and F again, it's going to jump between those different options. Essentially what that's doing is it's making the loop cut even. So once I've got that one, I'm satisfied with that. I've got some vertices down here I don't need, so I'm going to click 1, 2, and then the middle one last. So then I'm going to merge those. Alt-M for a PC, Option-M for a Mac. I'm going to choose at last because the middle one was at last. And so that's now merged, and I'll make some subtle adjustments, turning proportional editing off. So I want to make that nice and even. So that's the shape of my shield, highlighting the whole thing. C and then hold down Shift and I'll deselect the middle. Next step, I'm going to apply this mirror modifier. So the whole shield will now be 2 pieces. So if I click apply, it's important that this is at the top. Apply, can't do this in edit mode, so tab, apply, and now I've got my whole shield here. So if you need to adjust your highlighting, please do so. I'm going to put a little ridge around the outside. So I'm going to push the letter I and move my mouse in. Don't go too far, otherwise you'll turn the faces inside out. I'm going to push the middle mouse button and G for grab, X for x-axis, and pull that out slightly to give it a bit of a ridge. I need another loop cut because you'll notice it's pulling away on the edge. Control R for a loop cut, and pull that up, and that's enough for my purposes. Cool, so I've got this very flat looking shield. I think it looks more aesthetically pleasing with a bulge through the middle, so I'm going to highlight the middle of my shield, and I'm going to pull that forward, GX. Then I'm going to drop some of that, GX, and this part, GX, and possibly again here, GX, and have a look. Do I like how that looks? So there's a nice round looking shield. Awesome. So with that being done, it's now time to start doing some texturing. Oops, forgot to do the thickness. So I'm going to make this thicker because, of course, a metal shield will be a little bit thicker. So I'm going to turn on Solidify Modifier. Solidify Modifier I've found at about 0.05 is about right. And what that really does is it creates some thickness. So if I show and hide that, you'll see the thickness. I'm going to apply this modifier, but I want to apply it at the top. So just click this up arrow, and now it's up here at the top. So that's applied first. So when I click that apply, can't do it in edit mode, of course, apply, it's now got some thickness. So that's the front, the back edge there. If I hold down Alt click, that gets the back, and this one is the front. I'm going to mark these as seams. So Control E, mark seam. Alt click, Control E, mark seam. I'll do the corners, Control E, mark seam, and you'll see these seams are red. This is for UV unwrapping. Again, corners, Control E, mark seam. And again down here, 1, 2, Control E, mark seam. So now that's told Blender where it's going to unwrap. I'm going to pull out 2 new windows, push T to get rid of that menu, pull down. Going to make this one the UV image editor, and I'm going to highlight over the top of that and push U and choose unwrap. So these are the pieces of my shield. This will also be the node editor. That's a little bit later. Push N to get rid of that region. I'm going to turn these around, and if I push A to deselect and L for island, I'm going to rotate this, and I think it's -90, -90, enter. And same over here, L, R, -90, enter. And I'm going to position these. I'm not sure which one's the front, which one's the back yet. But I think both of these could easily be scaled up just over the edge slightly. It's probably not important for the back section. You can make the adjustments as you like. So there's my basic UV layout. That's overlapping on the edge. It's not the end of the world. That'll overlap over there. So just make a slight adjustment. It'll do. Now I'm going to make a texture and apply it over here. So I'm going to hit New. I'm going to choose Grid Test Texture. And I'm going to make it a little bit larger. So this is, I'm going to make it 3 times bigger. So times 3. And again, times 3. So that's making it 3K. Instead of generated type being blank, I'm going to choose UV grid. grid test texture, 3K, grid, and then OK. So that's made this grey checkered picture. It's not saved yet, so I'm going to save that image, save as image, and I'm going to put it in my desktop. The next thing I'm going to start working with is the node editor region. I'm going to change the blender render up the top here to cycles, and I'm going to click new. So this is bringing up the node editor. By default, this diffuse BSDF node, I'm going to delete that X and get rid of that. Add shader, principal BSDF shader. This does what the last one did and more. I'm going to connect those two there. Now I'm going to add in an image texture. Add texture, image texture, and connect the colors. This little icon here that looks like a picture, if I click it, it has a list of all of the open textures. So this one, grid test texture, is already open, so it's on the open list. Okay, so now they're all attached. If I change my view type from solid to either rendered or material, I'll now see my checkered texture applied. It's good to test this. We can see that this is a nice even square, not stretched and rectangular, and it's the same on both sides. Something simple like the shield shouldn't really need too much modification. Okay, so the next thing to do once we've done our little testing is to actually connect up real metals. So I'm going to use textures from the Poliigon website. So this is Poliigon, POL2IGON.com, search metal. This one here is free. It's called Metal Spotty Discoloration 001. I've already downloaded that, but when you do, make sure that you use the metalness workflow, and that will work properly. You've got to use the metalness workflow. If you want more videos on how to use it, you can use Blender Guru's videos on YouTube. They're very good. This one here is good, and it's publicly listed, and for some reason he's unlisted this one, which I actually think is a little bit better, but it's photorealism explained and how to link them. So what I'm going to do now is go and link that up. So I'm going to open, and I've got this in textures. So I'm a Blender Guru or Poliigon customer, so I've got a whole bunch already. M for metal. Whoops. What's the name of it again? Metal Spotty Discoloration. So here it is, Metal Spotty Discoloration. I take it in, metalness, and I've got a list. COL here in the middle, that's color, displacement, metalness, normals, 2 versions, and roughness. So I'm going to start with color and open image. This is the only one that's color data, and you'll see over here it doesn't really look much like metal at the moment, but with the extra maps it will. So a little time saver is to duplicate this, Shift D, and when I click open, it goes to the correct folder. The next one I'm going to choose is the metalness map. This tells Blender where it's metal and where it's not. Change color to non-color data. Really important. I'm going to plug that one into the metalness map, and that starts making it look a little bit like metal. Next, duplicate again. This is the roughness map. So choosing roughness, open, and then drop this into the roughness map. And so it looks nice and shiny now. Increase that subdivision surface, it will start looking a little bit flatter. Highlight those, G to grab, pull them up, and maybe alternatively I could pull that one down. So duplicate, and this is going to be the normal map. So I go open and NRM, and I'm going to pick the smallest one. It's going to be a little bit easier on the computer memory. This one has to be fed through, add vector, normal map. So that's going to get fed through a normal map. I'm going to connect this, and it's going to start putting in extra data about the bumps. So you'll see now that these bumps and scratches are there. If I mute it by clicking that and hitting M for mute, they'll disappear. So the color's there, but the extra light data about what angle is it on is disappeared. So if I just push M again, they will reappear. Give it a bit of time. It's getting a bit laggy with that level of subdivision surface on, so I'll probably turn that down. There we go. So you can see some of the brush marks and the dents and the scratches. If you don't like the scale of that, then we can change it, and you can do that at any time. With the Node Wrangler add-on, I'm going to Control-click one of these, Control-T, out will pop some mapping nodes, so mapping and the texture coordinates. Since these are all the same coordinates, I'm going to connect them up. And what that will then allow me to do is adjust the scale. So if I highlight all of those, click and drag all the way down, and if I want to repeat that many times over, let's say 5 times over, and push enter, it has now repeated some of that pattern. If you overdo it, you'll see repetition. So this shape here is repeated up there, and it's also repeated over there. So 5's too many. So if I change that maybe to 2, and if you like it even smaller, you can go less than 1 if you'd like. So that's all in material view. It doesn't look that good. So rendered view is better, but I've got no lights. So you'll see that no lights looks terrible. So I'm going to put some lights in. Some good lights to put in might be some large planes. So I'm going to insert a plane there, rotate, scale, over here, Shift A, plane, rotate, scale, make that one nice and big. I'm going to add some materials, some emission materials, new, change diffuse to emission, increase that to about 10. And this one over here, new, change diffuse again to emission, make this one, I don't know, about 5, and we'll give that a bit of a test and see how that's going to work out. These are really large light sources, and that helps stop it get crazy shadows. So now if I zoom in and look at it under rendered view, I've got this nice shiny looking, little bit damaged and discolored looking, like the look of that. So when I come back, for example, so if I come back to this view, scroll out. So in solid view under edit, I can see all of these UVs. Now with these UVs, I can do stuff in Photoshop. So I go click UV and export UV layout. You need to be in edit mode for this to work. So I'm going to export that UV layout. I'm going to put this on my desktop. So this is UV layout. Export that. And then I'm going to keep all of those standard settings down there. I don't really need to change them. And then in Photoshop, I'm going to open those. File, open. UV layout for tutorial. Open. And it's a little hard to see. So what I'll do is add in a new layer. And this one, actually, that's perfect. Actually, I can just see it. And I hope you can on screen. I'm going to put in here, or whichever side it happens to be, the birds. So I need to find out which side is the birds and which side isn't. So if I just change this one back quickly to the test grid, actually probably don't even need to do that. Rendered view. And over here on the UV, L, and turn down the subdivision surface because it's just lagging my computer. Now if I move this, if that changes, and it doesn't, so I'll push escape, it must be this side, That's the front. Hit G for grab, and you'll see it now moving. So that is the front of my UV. Front of my shield is that side. So on Photoshop, if I start putting something in here, it can affect or be used to affect the surface of my shield. So I'm going to place embedded, and I'm going to go and find what I'm looking for. PNG file here. This one's the best because it's got some transparency in there already. So that'll come in. I'm going to scale that to the appropriate size and stick it in the middle of my shield. I don't want all the rest of it, so I'm going to use the eraser. And I think I need to resatterize this before I can. Yep, so I can't do it without resatterizing, so I'm going to resatterize, and I'm going to erase the bits that I don't want. Hitting the square bracket tool to minimize or reduce the size of my eraser. I'm going to do a few more things, so I'm clicking on that shield, and I'm going to go and change. I'm going to image adjustments, invert, so that's going to change the black to white, and then I'm going to blur the edge, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I'm going to leave that about there, about 0.3. So doing that's going to have a nice soft edge for my bump. And this layer 0, actually no, brand new layer will do. I'm going to use the flood fill bucket, so this one here, paint bucket tool, and I'm going to paint it with a medium grey. And there's my medium grey, that didn't quite fill, so that's because I've got the wrong layers going on. Dump that layer. And I'm going to just fill in there, and that will work. Now I don't need anything else going on. I'm going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to change this to a PNG. This allows transparencies if I want to, but it's a nice format for me to use. So UV layout doesn't need to be called that anymore. I'm going to call this the bump map. Bump map for the tutorial. I'm going to save that. So now that that's saved, or nearly saved, save now, I'm going to come back into Blender. So I want to see that bumping and pushing out the surface of my shield. Bump. So this has an input for normal, so you'll see if I drop that there, the normal will go through it, but I'm also going to connect this into the height. So now that has said put in bump shield slightly off center. So that's 2. So the next thing to do is to add some surface imperfections, putting some dirt wipes over the top.
So I'm going to create a little bit of space, and I'm going to do something that's going to affect the roughness. So this part is, it's an overlay, so we can go add, search, mix RGB shader, mix RGB, and if we change that to overlay, then we get this part. So I'm going to add in a surface imperfection. I'm going to duplicate, Shift D, and just going to put in my I'm going to put in a surface wipe. So when I go and open this, go to my textures folder, wiping residue. I'm going to check which one's the free one first. So I'm going to use Dirt Wipes 005. ABCD Dirt Wipes 005, 3K, and that's now open. I'm going to connect that up and drop it. I'm going to Control Shift click. That is now showing just the dirt wipes. I think that scale is a little bit large. I'm going to Control T and change the mapping. So if I click and drag down, that highlights all three. I'm going to go 0.5. So that is now allowing me to change the size. I'm imagining somebody rubbing back and forth and cleaning that and seeing how that would work. So that's not affecting the color, it's affecting the roughness. If I click that, that's now both of them, the roughness of the metal texture and the wipes back and forth. And then when I shift click there, I can try to see some of the dirt wipes. It's not overly obvious, so I can change the factor to get a higher amount or a lesser amount, there we go, of each. That factor becomes how much are they blending together. The next thing I'm going to do is put in a custom dirt and blood splatter mix. So I'm going to duplicate and I'm going to clear that out because this will open a transparent layer that I haven't made yet. So in Photoshop, I'm going to create a 3K or 3072 by 3072 texture. File new. So dirt layer, 3072 by 3072 pixels, and then I'm going to go create. I'm going to put that, first I'm going to make this transparent, so that's all now transparent. File, save as. So in this tutorial, dirt layer 02, then go OK. Back to Blender. I'm now going to open this dirt layer 02. That's saved as a PSD document. I don't want that. File, save as, PNG. PNG. Dirt layer 2, save PNG. Okay. Dirt layer 02, PNG. open image, and I'm going to be saving this, so I need it open in here. So if I now open Dirt Layer 2 PNG, I'm going to check image, save as image. This has to be RGBA. If that's not RGBA, then I can't save transparencies. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is go to material mode, and I'm going to start painting in texture paint. I have to have this image texture attached and connected. So I'm going to duplicate this this node here, the mix RGB node. That's going to pop down into there, and that's going to connect here with the transparency as a factor. So when I paint in here, push T to bring up my colors. I've got brown made here, so if I make a just to check the size of my brush, Shift F to change the softness, F to change the size of the brush. I put some dirt down here. It's not showing up particularly well, so that may show up a little bit better in this mode, and I'll check it a little bit later for the method. So this is dirt, and I can just bring that and build that up slowly. And then if I change to a nice red color, then maybe I have some blood splatters coming down here. You'd be better off using a drawing pad than doing what I'm doing with the mouse. But the idea here is not to show you how to draw, but how to employ the method. So now I'm going to click Image, Save Image. So that's now saved. I want to make sure that this is open to the most up-to-date version. And then I can just go Open Image, and that will reopen it. Come back to Rendered View. Now, how this mixes is largely in this Mix RGB node. So if we try some of the common options, such as Overlay, you can see a little bit of the brown down the bottom here, but it's really not giving us the version that we're after. So essentially this Mix RGB node is doing some maths. Through a little bit of experimentation, I've found that linear light has made a nice big red splodge there, which makes us allows us to see it. Unfortunately, right now everything is still reflecting as if it was metal. So what we want to do is tell Blender that this isn't metal anymore, because if we look at this metalness map, none of this is currently affected. So we want to take this and combine it with the metalness map and say, hey, this is dirt and blood. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this information here and we're going to turn it into black and white. So we're going to go Add, Search, BW. So that's RGB, the colors to black and white. So if I take this color out here and we see what that looks like, that's our black and white version of this. And that white possibly needs to be inverted, because if we look at this in the metalness map, then the white is the metal and this needs to be inverted because that is the non-metal part. So Add, Search, Invert. that into here and test that one out, and we can see it's not particularly strong, but that part is now grey. And what we're going to do is combine this with the metalness map. So add search RGB, mix RGB. We're going to take the color coming out of here. And that is going to be the metalness. Or have I just made a mistake here? That's the metalness. This is color. I don't want to combine the color. I want to combine that one. Okay, so when I check this, that white, perhaps I need to mute that. Go. It's connected strangely. Mix. I'm going to try. So with this set to overlay, I'm not quite getting the result I'm after. If I get a mix, it's nearly there, but I'm losing some data. So I need to do this only where it's transparent. So that's some data there, but it's not particularly strong. And I look here, and I'm seeing parts where I've painted, and I'm not happy with that. Just testing out. Cool, so this area here now doesn't have some data that I'm looking at. That needs to be darker. Oops. So it's a bit darker. It's showing more up there. So we can still see dirt, blood. It's not quite affecting the metallicness the way I'd like it to. I think we'll also need to feed this into the roughness. So I can see some smears, I can see some blood, dirt. If I go to my camera view, now I've got a shield with dirt ready to be rendered. So I'm going to save this, go image, save as image, tutorial render, and you have to make sure that your painting is saved, image, make sure you go image save, and you've also got to make sure that your color overlay is also to the most up to date. It's good to make sure that your render view on Subdivision Surface is enough to get it nice and curved. But what we can see is surface imperfections with the smear, the bump map, the way it's catching the light. Got blood red up there, dark dirt splatters down here, and we have a shield with surface imperfections and custom paint job.